All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. This is Internet Marketing Unleashed. I'm your host, Scott Paton, and the Dean of Blogonomics and Podology is back. I've been doing so many podcasts and shows and live streams for other people that I just said, you know what? I got to go and, do my own thing, right? And not necessarily be the star of the show because I've got an amazing guest that's going to be joining us. I got to make sure I look at the right place, and we're going to have a lot of fun. The purpose of this show is just for me to hang out with my buddies and my buddies to be. So if you're into internet marketing, business, helping people, that sort of thing, reach out to me. I'd be happy to have you on. I'm not particularly selling anything, but I cannot. Actually, I'm not selling anything, but my guests are probably going to be, and that's great. And that's one of the reasons I want them here is I think that they have amazing services, amazing products, and I want you to know about them. And I also think that they're absolutely incredible people who have a servant's heart and want to give back. That's why they're here. I mean, I'm not paying them; they're volunteering. So, my first guest in this series, and this will probably last for years, is a great friend of mine. He lives in Florida, and he's an amazing copywriter. His skill with words is second to none. And so this time we're going to be talking a lot about copy, a little bit about marketing, whatever actually he wants to talk about is what we're going to be talking about. But his copy is absolutely phenomenal. I did a little bit of research, and he's got testimonials from some very well-known people like in our industry, like Matt Basak, Dan Kennedy, and others. But there was one that Julie Boswell left on his page that I think really sums up what Everte can do. And she says, what Everte did for my book was amazing. He took what started as a textbook, and I can just imagine what her book would have looked like, right? Because she's taking her knowledge and she's putting it down, and it's not necessarily easy. Well, and she says, he turned it into an easily understandable health book. His ability to use the written word to communicate his clients' thoughts for them is remarkable. I have no doubt that Everte took my book that had life-changing information in it and turned it into a book that changes life. And that's such an important distinction. Thank you, Anthony DiClemente. So with that, I'm going to bring on our guest. Everte, how are you doing? Hang on a second. There we go. Welcome.
Thank you, Scott. That's one hell of an introduction. I hope I live up to it. Thank you.
I have no doubt that you will. So one of the reasons why I think copywriting is so important is in about 1999. Oh my goodness, 1999. I can't even say it anymore. I'm so used to 2000, right? I was teaching people how to do things online, like turn on their computer and get online and answer emails. And then they started asking me, how do I, do you make a website? Can you make a website? I didn't know. And I didn't know how to do it. And so I learned how to do it, right? And then it was, so I got a website, Scott, but I got no traffic. So I figured out, some pay-per-clicks. It was, I forget the name. Before Google AdWords, there was like an Overture thing. Do you remember the name of those guys?
No, I don't, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So, it was easy, right? Because nobody was doing it. We got lots of traffic, but then they weren't getting conversions. And I was stumped. I'd never heard the word copywriting. So what happened was I was at one of these networking meetings, and the guy who had started the whole group was there, and he was a fax blaster. And as soon as I heard that spam guy, I didn't want to have anything to do with him. I was trying to, so how, if someone tries to avoid you, you go after them. Well, he cornered me like I couldn't get away, but he had this story. He just had to tell me. He said, so here I'm thinking, oh, spam blaster, guy. And he says, yeah, so I'm in another town in Canada, Edmonton, and I've got a client and she's a florist. So she wants me to send out 10,000 faxes to people in Edmonton. So he doesn't do it all at once. He chops them all up and sends them out over a week. But he looks at what she wants faxed, and he says, "This is really awful." And he says to her, "Do you mind if I kind of like change it around a little bit?" She goes, "Oh, do whatever you want to do. I don't care." So he did. And after 3 days, she calls him and says, "Stop the faxes." And he was like, "Oh my goodness, like, what have I done wrong?" "No," she says, "I can't keep up with the business." And he says, "What I did was I changed her headline and a little bit at the beginning, and I left everything the same. But the headline made all the difference. And then it was, oh, copywriting. So I got the AWAI copywriting course. And at the same time, the Internet Marketing Center hired me. And of course, they have their own copywriting course. So I was learning 2 copywriting courses while I was learning how to be a coach for them. And for AWAI, each month they would send me, a bunch of like a chapter in this course to read and work to do. And I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I thought, what can I do to, keep up with this stuff? Because I just don't seem to have any time. And I thought, you know what, if I put it by my night table and I read for 15 minutes a night before I go to sleep, I could do that. And it was amazing to me how this massive pile of reading dropped down to nothing. And I was caught up in a I don't recall how long it was. I just recall being shocked at how fast the pile went down, which to me, the lesson from that is, always set yourself up for success. As long as that pile was in my office, it was never going to get touched. As soon as I put it somewhere where I could take a short period of time and do a little bit, then it happened. And that was the beginning of my copywriting journey. So it makes me really excited to have you on, because I don't often get a chance to talk to expert copywriters.
Well, I appreciate that. It's funny. There's a couple things that came to mind while you were saying that. First, you were saying how quickly you were going to spend 15 minutes and how quickly the pile went down. My suspicion is that you probably ended up spending more than 15 minutes, because good copywriting.
I didn't time myself, that's for sure.
No, well, it just, you get pulled into something. So I was reading one of those, and darn it, I can't remember the name of the author right now, but it was one of the books. Tom Hanks has had a whole thing where he's like this cryptologist, and they're running around Rome and they're looking for stuff. And
I know the book you mean.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
it was one of those series. There's a series of books. I forget which one it was, but one of the things that I was struck by is that every chapter was 3 to 5 pages. And I thought, how brilliant, because how many times in my life have I gone to get a book to read? And by the way, people are going, well, what does this have to do with copywriting? It has everything to do with copywriting. How many times in my life have I gone to get a book to read and said, I got like 20 minutes, but damn it, this is like a 30-page chapter, and I hate to stop in the middle of the chapter because you don't remember what's going on. It's not a natural break. Is there a place in the chapter that has kind of where it changes scenes in the book? And I'll just go do something else for right now. But with this book, you could always just grab it and read 3 pages, 5 pages. Even if you only had 10 minutes, you could just grab it and read the pages real quick. And what it would do is it would suck you in, right? So now you grab it, you read the 3 pages. Now you're sucked into the writing, and you're like, it's 10 more minutes. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I'll just put it off for you. And, so that's really one of the things. It's one of the arts that's missing with great copywriting in the world today. And by the way, I don't consider myself a great copywriter. I am I would say that I'd say that I'm good. I mean, my client list, is impressive. My testimonials are impressive, but I ain't Gary Halbert. I ain't Paris Lantropoulos. I know I always pronounce his name wrong. Sorry, Paris. But, I ain't one of these guys, right? I'm a solid.
You're you.
Yeah, well, but what I tell people is, look, I'm a solid base hit guy, right? We're going to do something. It's going to be solid. You're going to hit we're going to have a base hit. You might not hit a home run, but you're going to have a solid base hit every time. It's reliable, and I stand behind it.
Right.
So, but one of the things that people miss with copywriting is they miss that you've really got to help the client kind of, or help the prospect kind of fall down the page, right? So it's
Mhm.
the writing has got to be smooth. It's got to be easy. It's okay. A lot of people think, oh, you can't use any 3-syllable words. No, it's okay to use 3-syllable words. It's okay to use 4-syllable words occasionally, as long as they're easy words to read, as long as they're words that everybody knows, right? So you don't want to use some real complicated word that that somebody's got to stop and think about. You know what I mean? That's kind of the deal. Is that you want to make it real. You want the headline to grab their attention, and then you want the rest of it just to kind of be nice and easy and flow and easy to read. And one of the ways you do that, and we're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves, but one of the ways you do that is you read the copy out loud. Or better yet, if you have access to a 12 or 13-year-old, you have them read the copy out loud. And every time they stumble, you highlight that. Okay. And then you just go
That's a
through and have,
great tip. That is
yeah,
a great tip.
go through and have them read it. And I mean, if you don't have a 12 or 13-year-old, go find a 12 or 13. I mean, there's somebody
They're
in
all
your
over the
neighborhood.
place.
Yeah, like there's lots of them, right? And say, look, I'll give you $10 to read this, and if you
Yeah.
stumble over anything, or if you don't understand any of the words, just let me know what they are,
Right.
and then just sit there and have them read it out loud. And it's amazing how much smoother you can make your copy. And we hear things all the time. We hear things about headlines that grab attention. By the way, I got something I learned about 7.5 years ago from from an Agora group about internet marketing and headlines that'll blow people's lips off. But headlines that grab attention, and problem agitate solve, or I mean, that's the big one for if you're selling to people who already have a problem and they know they have a problem, then problem agitate solve. Otherwise, you got to use AIDI, attention, interest, desire, action. And that's a much more tricky formula to use effectively. But if you look at all the great interruption marketing promos, it's attention, interest, desire, action. Something happen. There's something that highlights somebody's curiosity, that highlights their interest, and gets them or gets their attention, and then builds that to interest. But you'll find that so for example, in the financial newsletter world, which is big online, obviously. I mean, there's companies doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I mean, they're huge companies. That's the primary business Agora is in, or at least one of the primary businesses. They're $1 billion a year company. It's ridiculous.
Right. The Oxford Club.
Right, exactly. That's one of Agora's affiliates. So if you look at all their promos, it's an AIDI promo, because if they say how to use options to make money, how to use options to make more money, it just kind of falls flat. Yes, people have a problem that they don't know how to use options to make more money in their investing and their trading. That
Right.
is a legitimate problem. It's a legitimate problem that lots of people have, but you're not going to get any views with that, primarily because the market is such a direct response, sophisticated market. They've been exposed to so much direct response. But for most people, right, for most businesses, especially most niche businesses, problem agitate solve is much easier, and it's a perfectly legitimate formula to write to. But the important part is that it's got to be easy to read, right? So
Yes.
even if you're doing a VSL, it's got to be easy to read, or if you're doing a VSL, it's got to be easy to listen to. You can't make somebody think too much. You've got to grab their attention and not make them think too much. And I know that, I mean, I know people say, well, no, they've got to, I've got to get them thinking about their problem. Yes, you do. You got to get them thinking about your problem, but you've got to get them emoting about their problem is really what the answer is. You've got to get them into this problem agitates a solution. You've got to get them from thinking intellectually about their problem to feeling about their problem. And when somebody's feeling about something, they're not thinking about something. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, it does. I have got a plane going over, so I'm muting myself a little more than I normally do. But yeah, I actually like what you're saying about, being smooth and not. And you want to get them, like when I'm reading a book and I really like the book, I'm not thinking about what I'm reading, right? Like
You're just lost in it.
I'm lost in the book, and you're talking about getting lost in the copy, and then when you get to the end, I want more, and what I need to do is push that little button that you leave at the end.
Exactly. So, it's not unlike speaking. As a matter of fact, I think it was you who, at one point, I saw you doing a presentation about speaking. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to brag on Scott a little bit. He did work at the Internet Marketing Center with the late great Corey Riddle, he ended up leaving that job because he did a presentation and with his boss on the same stage, and sold more than his boss. And we all know what I don't know if it's the first rule of power, but one of the rules of power is never outshine the master.
That's right.
So my point is, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to selling from the stage. But because those guys weren't any joke. Those guys knew what they were doing. Yes. But anyway, one of the things, I'm pretty sure it was you taught in that presentation, it's been a lot of years, but you said that when you're, that if you do the speech properly so that people want more of you, it's not necessary now to hard close them. It's just natural for them to go buy the product. Well, it's the same thing with copywriting. If you write the copy in such a way that people want more of you, then it's not necessary for you. I mean, it's necessary for you to close them, just like you got to tell them, go to the table and buy. You still have to tell them that. But it's not necessary to have cheesy, ridiculous, over-the-top, hard closes. And you don't have to do all that stuff. You don't have to do all that mess. All you have to do is let them know how they can get more of you. And it's kind of the natural thing. It's the natural next step for them to take is, I want more of this. I want more of this guy. I want more of what he's saying. I want more of this, of these feelings that I'm getting by reading this copy. I'm agitated now because of the bad things going on in my life, whatever that might be. But when I got to the solution part, I felt better. I felt lighter. I want more of that. How do I get more of that? Well, you get it by whipping out your credit card and, purchasing this item, whatever it might be. And it's funny because, there's a lot of people in the internet marketing niche that only sell to the internet marketing niche. But what I find is when I work with people who are selling to other niches, whatever those other niches might be, but it has nothing to do with making money on the internet, suddenly it becomes so much easier because, these people it's not like they're reading the copy to try and dissect what smart things did this person say. No, they just, they're just going about, they're reading the copy because they're interested. And it makes it just, so much easier to convert. It's a pleasure to work with somebody who is outside of the make money online niche. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was thinking that exact same thing. We think everybody knows all our copywriting secrets because we're hanging around with everybody that knows all our copywriting secrets.
Exactly.
That's a small percentage of the population who would much rather watch America's Got Talent or something than and buy something on Amazon that we tell them that they should go get, as opposed to the make money online niche that's, like you say, dissecting everything. And it's really amazing how much of a difference it makes. I've been doing a fair bit of work in the real estate investing training field, and just I got field. Yeah, and I got introduced to a bunch of people in there, and they're all, and it's just amazing to me how bad the copy is. Right? It's like I've got more work to do here than I could, shake a stick at, because because they don't know how to write copy, and of course they don't know who's a good copywriter, and they have poor copywriters that just put together I think they use, I don't know what they use, but I suspect they use one of those fill in the blanks, all right, you know, and it spits out copy things at the end, because it sure looks like it.
I had an old copy of that from, I think it came from, the hell's his name? Real strange name, Yannick.
Yannick.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had a copy. I didn't buy it. Somebody gave it to me, and and I went Yannick Silver. I went through and filled in all the stuff, and it printed out. And even as a wet behind the ear brand new copywriter 15 years ago, I was like, man, this sucks. This is horrible.
Yeah, some things you really need you need to really enjoy writing, and you need to really enjoy learning, because you've got to learn about the product or service that the person's got. And then you have to really love, you know, the human mind and how it works, right? Because you've got to get in there and you've got to influence it and move people from one place to another place. It could be from, I don't even know I need this, to, oh, I really got to get it, or I know I have a problem, but I don't know what the solution is, to, wow, now I've found that solution.
Right. Exactly. Well, you know, I before I forget, I did promise the people watching a tip that I learned about headlines online from Agora, from an Agora affiliate. Headline online, your headlines matter far less, like almost none, compared to an offline marketing piece.
Really?
Now, yeah.
I didn't know that. I never thought about it before, but I did.
Well,
that wouldn't have been my guess.
Once I heard that, and by the way, that was backed up with testing. We tested 5 different headlines, conversion exactly the same. So I'm going, well, you know, the chances of 5 different headlines pulling exactly the same is like 0. What it tells you is the headline doesn't matter. Why doesn't the headline matter? And I think I figured out the reason why. It's because the purpose of the headline is to get buy-in to read the marketing piece. So when you put a headline in a newspaper, or you put a headline in a direct mail piece and mail it out, somebody is completely interrupted by that. And the headline is the piece of the interruption marketing that gets buy-in to read the rest of the piece, read the rest of the ad, read the rest of the sales letter, etc. But when you're online, very rarely is somebody coming, just hopping onto your website randomly just by chance. Generally, they have read an ad and they've clicked on it. They've they've read an ad, gone to an advertorial, read the advertorial. They've gotten an email, got interested in what you had to say in the sales letter in the email. In other words, when they arrive on your page, you already have buy-in.
Right. I think that's amazing analysis, and I think you're right.
Now, that doesn't still do a good headline, right? I mean, I'm not
right. That doesn't mean you can just put any old thing up there. You've got to continue the process.
Exactly. You still want, but what I'm saying is that, you know, if you're doing a direct mail piece, you better write, literally, I'm not exaggerating, one of the best copywriters in the world, rest his soul, is the one who told me about this. You have to write. He used to write 200 headlines, and he'd done billions of dollars. And by the way, I'm talking about Ted Nicholas. He'd done billions of dollars in sales from his copy, billions. And
that's a lot of headlines.
He used to write 200 headlines for every ad that he did, and then he would go through after it rested. He'd go through and he'd pick 5 or 6 headlines, and you know, to test, and then he would test what he thought was the best, the 5 or 6, and you know, of course, a guy with that much experience, what he thought was substantial. You know, I mean, it was good. But he was doing all that was for offline marketing, right? Now, what I'm saying is, you don't have to spend half, 60, 70, 80% of your time writing headlines now. You know, write 5 or 8 headlines, come up with a good headline, put it on there, and understand that it's your emails, it's your Facebook ad, it's your Google ad, it's your space ad, it's your text ad, it's the advertorial that you put up in front of the website, you know, in front of the sales page. That's all the stuff that's going to get buy-in into doing the sales page, and into at least listening. Now, that said, it's still critically important that you have fantastic deck copy. It's still critically important that you don't bore people. It's more important now that that's true, because everybody, if you're reading a sales letter, you kind of feel invested, right? You get 3 or 4 pages in and you're like, okay, you hit a little slow spot, but now you're kind of invested because you've invested the time in 3 or 4 pages. So you're going to on a website, it's click, as you know, click,
Right.
and they're gone like Donkey Kong, never to return. So, so it's critically important that your deck copy really enthralls the people and gets them completely interested in the process, and then that the rest of your copy is quick. It doesn't bore them, it doesn't make them work, and it still influences them.
Nice. That's a really good summary and summation of what you need to do when you want to move people with copy.
So
I was going to
people
go ahead, Everett.
Okay, I was going to say, if people know me, then and not that anybody should know me for any given reason, but if people do know me, then I don't want to disappoint anybody. We need to make sure that we talk a little bit about con artists and how they are the best influencers in the history of the world. If for no other reason, now they're not ethical. I'm not saying we should emulate their lack of ethics, but as far as just pure, unmitigated influencers, they influence and move people better than anybody else in the history of the world. A good con artist is better than anybody. And because they use no force, they use no compulsion, and they get people to buy in with wholly ridiculous, improbable, impossible claims and ideas, and people willingly and excitedly buy into those claims and ideas. For example, the money machine, the old money machine con. Are you familiar with that, Scott, or no?
No, I'm not familiar with the old money machine con.
Okay, so I am embarrassed to say that I got to look up the name of the guy who was famous for it, because that's something I should know off the top of my head. I've read enough about him. But yes, Count Lustig, Count Victor Lustig was perhaps the best con man in history. Certainly one of the best con men in history. But he used to do what was called the money machine con. And what the money machine, what this is that he would create a machine that you would put a $1 bill in, and it had some doohickeys and some lights, and it would make a little buzzing sound. And he'd roll the $100 bill into it, and then it would, and 3, 4, 5 hours later, out would come a $100 bill. And he would present this to people, and the idea was, listen, I'm now you got to realize that Count Lustig lived, and by the way, nobody's really 100% sure how old he was. Nobody's really 100% sure where he was born. Somewhere in Austria, Germany, I think it was, Austria or Germany, I'm pretty sure. Nobody's really sure whether he came from a complete, from an actual royal line, or whether he came from complete poverty, right? I mean, there's all this fuzzy stuff about Count Lustig, but he assumed the moniker Count,
Right.
So that's how history remembers him. But this machine would buzz and do its thing for a few hours, and then when it was shut off 3 or 4 hours later, you'd roll it out and there'd be a $100 bill. And so he was wealthy. He had all this money. He, and then of course it was all an image. But eventually he would hang out with with people who had a lot of money, and eventually something would happen and he would need he'd need some money. So he would need $30,000 by next week, and it was just too much. He couldn't make it himself, and would the person be willing to buy the machine from him for $30,000 or rent it for about a time or whatever? There's different iterations, and he'd sell this machine to people, and they would they'd take it, and of course now lest there be any question, the machine did not turn $1 bills into $100 bills. What he did is he loaded with $500 or $800 bills, and when you put your dollar in, it would buzz and click, and when you undid it, when you took your dollar out, there was $100 bill there. Well, after the $100 bills were gone, it stopped. So, he would get 30,000. Well, he'd have $800 in the thing. He'd get 20, 30,000. This is when a time when 20 or 30,000 meant something, right? It's
that's
back
a
in
lot
the
of
20s.
money.
And he'd get that money. Well, by the time somebody figured out what was happening, of course, the good count had absconded town, and was never found again. So, you say, well, okay, so he was getting stupid people. No, he was not getting stupid people. Stupid people in the 20s didn't have $30,000.
That's right.
He was getting smart people, and he was getting them to buy into the most wholly most wholly ridiculous proposition ever, because he knew how to influence people. So I've made a career out of studying these guys, because they are a lot of fun to study. But I've made a career out of studying these guys and learning what they do to influence people, and then adding some ethics to it, because I'm the guy who I won't even do copywriting work for somebody if I think that their stuff is bullshit.
Right.
There's got to be some benefit commensurate to what somebody's paying for. Otherwise, I'm not interested. But I've made a career out of studying these guys, and then taking the information, taking the process that they use, and applying it for business owners. It's of course much easier to apply for a coach than it is to apply for a roofer, but it works. It works either way,
right?
And it's fantastic stuff.
That's a great story, Everett. Thank you very much for sharing it. We're getting close to the end of our time together, and I want to respect your time. If somebody is interested in selling more of their products or services, and because they have poor copy, that's where we need to focus, and that would be you. How can they get a hold of you, and what should they be doing?
Probably the easiest way is just to go to Facebook. I have a website that's kind of being revamped, and we're getting a new CRM system put in place. And believe it or not, I'm the holdup in the process, because I have not delivered the copy for the new website, because, shoemakers, kids' shoes.
I know exactly what you mean.
So, but that said, probably just go to Facebook, and hopefully my name is somewhere where they can look, because it's spelled a little differently than most people would spell it. But I'm pretty sure I'm the only person on Facebook with my name. So just type it in. You'll see a little. You'll see a little sketch as my profile picture that a copywriter in Zimbabwe was kind enough to do for me a few years ago, and I thought it was really cool. So I made it my profile picture, and it's been there ever since. By the way, Jay, if you're listening, shout out, brother.
Right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Everett. I really appreciate hanging out with you. And when I was down in Florida, you made special effort to come and visit me in Tampa, and I really appreciated that as well. And you introduced me to awesome wings, which I never would have experienced without you. So,
well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed them, and I am, anytime. I always have a great time hanging out.
Yeah, me too. And thanks for joining us, everybody. Really appreciate you tuning in as well. And this is the Internet Marketing Unleashed. I'm Scott Paton, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.